Stuart, I have a question. This is Derek.
Yes, Derek.
Could you talk about family and how the importance of family and relationships in our work? And I'll admit I have a pretty open understanding of that, and it's not very, it's not strict or anything. I just would like to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, to be honest with you, a conscious use of family is one of the quickest ways to grow inside yourself. To be able to treat people who you love and are close to you with kindness, with love. I mean, it really is an extraordinary teacher. And those are usually the people it's the easiest to come down on, the people that are the closest to us. We see every problem, we see every mistake, we see everything they do wrong. And we often just, use that against them instead of saying, how can I use this to grow and develop in myself a much deeper sense of my own humanity and learn to love people and not have expectations because people really mess it up all the time. People are prone to make mistakes, to doing all kinds of stupid things. We have to grow big enough in ourselves to allow these people to learn about their own lives, to give them room to, especially our children, to give them room to develop, to learn from their mistakes, to grow because of their mistakes. And to do this requires you have to be a very big person inside. To be, you really have to develop a chemistry that is strong enough to put up with a lot of nonsense. And a lot of nonsense goes on in family, where people fight with each other, take advantage of each other. They, anyway, you all know. I mean, everybody here has been involved in families, so you got to know what I'm talking about. And I think it's an incredible place to grow. Having a relationship with another human being is an incredible place to grow. I mean, there are many different views on this. People say you sequester yourself, you live in a monastery, a cave, you don't get involved with the external world. I don't think this meditation is about that. This meditation is about learning from every single area of life. And family is a very remarkable way to learn, because, especially raising children, thinking that they're supposed to function a certain way and they never do. They have their secrets, they have their friends, they have their telephones, they have their, whatever they have, and play in a very private world. And in most cases, parents are never allowed to get into that world unless there's profound trust. And our work is, as I just said before, this meditation is not about sequestering yourself. It's not about living in caves and monasteries, ashrams, and all this kind of stuff. It's about learning from every single area that life has to teach us. And we need to learn about the good, the bad, the indifferent, and the ugly. And we need to get strong enough inside ourselves to deal with all of it. Because when you live in this world, you will be confronted with all of it. I mean, even if you go live in a cave. So, I mean, I remember Annie, I will never forget her, uh, who used to come in my store all the time, and she was a Tibetan nun. She was an American girl, but she, shaved her head and they became a nun wearing robes and the whole thing. And, for a couple of years, every week or two, she would show up at my gallery. We would have talks about Buddhism and about, you know, and her dream was to go live in a cave somewhere in the Himalaya mountains. And one day she came in my shop. I mean, I told you this story a lot, but it's such a great story. One day she came in my shop and she said, Stuart, I found a cave. So I smiled. I said, wow, you must have a really good real estate agent, to find a cave somewhere in the Himalaya. No, I found a cave and I'm going to be leaving next week to go live in that cave and spend my time meditating. Anyway, I hadn't seen Annie for 2 years. And one day this girl walks in my gallery with long hair, jeans, like a regular young lady, walks in the gallery. And I kind of knew her, but I didn't know where I knew her from. And she said, Stuart, it's Annie. I said, oh my God, Annie, what happened to you? And then she tells me the story how she was living in this cave, and there was a sadhu who had a cave maybe 50 meters away from her. And he became jealous of her because the people in the village that used to cater strictly to this sadhu and take care were now taking care of both of them. And the sadhu believed that he had to be more important than Annie. And he began doing all kinds of crazy, putting rats in her cave and mice. And I mean, she said it got insane. And the people from the village came up to me one day and said, you better leave. This man is going to do a lot of damage to you. You better leave this cave. She had to leave. She came back, gave up her Buddhist robes and the shaved head and the whole thing, and was in college, and I think she had a boyfriend. So the cave completely transformed her life, not in the way that she wanted to, but in the way that her karma wanted her to. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter where you go in this world. It really doesn't matter. Your karma will attract the things that you need to grow. And, having children, having a spouse, having a family is a remarkable way to grow if we can do it consciously. But if we walk around judging everybody and, knowing better than everybody else, then it becomes a nightmare. The thing that can make us spiritually enlightened can become a nightmare if we don't learn how to grow inside ourselves and make room for it to exist and to teach us about what our karma is and what we have to do to grow every day. So it's, the answer, Derek, it's neither here nor there, It's basically what you do with it. It all depends on the individual. And are they willing to use the situation to really grow in their life? Or are they going to get caught up in knowing better than everybody and judging them and creating conflict and anger? And, I remember my grandmother, my sister used to come home. My grandmother was so judgmental with my sister. You're not this, you're not that, you're but, you got to find a good Jewish, boyfriend. You got to, and she used to, have all kinds of boyfriends, and she made my sister a little crazy, angry, and it wasn't the way to approach it. The way to approach it is, how do I learn from what this young person is trying? How do I love them unconditionally? How do I love another human being unconditionally? Learning that is a very fast step towards spiritual enlightenment, towards literally developing the highest levels of your own humanity. And then there's, we have choice in life. We don't have to spend our lives being tortured by, other people. We also can, I'm not ready for this. I can step away from it. I can walk away from it. I have to get stronger, but this isn't making me stronger. So I need to grow, and then you will attract somebody else. It's just the law of attraction. As I once told somebody, God created marriage and God created divorce. Nobody has to go through life being tortured by other people. But if those other people are really making you grow inside, people are starting to show up for class. I got about daylight savings time here. If those other people are making you grow, I mean, it's like Rudy kept going back to his teacher's ashram in India, and he really had to fight to get there. He couldn't stand going there. It was like torture for him to go. And I said to him one day, Rudy, why do you do this? I have never met anybody in the world who can break me down like Swami Muktananda can break me down. And I need to be broken down. That's why I go. Every time I go there, it is painful, it's an agony, but it forces me to go so deep inside myself that it gets me closer and closer to my spiritual enlightenment. Family can be the same kind of thing if we use it consciously. At the same time, there could be unconditional love amongst all the members of the family. And that is also a way for us to have gratitude and that we really have a family like that and get that kind of support from the other people in our lives. So to me, all of these things are important, not only for Derek, but for all of us. They're important. We need to learn from this enormous smorgasbord called life. And karma presents us with everything we need to learn to get spiritually enlightened, is whether or not we grow in ourselves to the point where we can love unconditionally, we can be in the world and not judge the world, and find deep happiness in ourselves and learn from whomever comes into our lives. Now, this is not easy to do. It's much easier to run away, much easier to run away. But sometimes you got to run away because you're not ready for what that particular karma brought into your life. So you got to step back. But then learning when you step back, I have to grow. Why couldn't I deal with this situation? I wasn't big enough in myself to deal with it. I've got to grow. And I always love this about the kind of meditation we practice. That it really is a meditation that has to do with living in the world, not sequestering yourself, hiding from the world, pretending this is sacred and that's not sacred. Life is sacred in all its dimensions. It has something to teach every one of us. And there are two people sitting here today that will experience it the same way. Good question, Derek. Really brought up a lot of great stuff. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question?
Stuart, I have a question. What does it mean to be broken down by one's teacher in the way that Rudy spoke of it?
Well, you had to spend 10 minutes around Swami Muktananda, Bob. You would never ask that question to be broken down by him. I mean, look, there's all kinds of stuff. Teachers, image they have of themselves, teachers being intimidated. Rudy was a very powerful energy, I mean, really powerful. And I think at some point he intimidated his teacher because of the strength that was inside Rudy. And in order for the teacher to deal with Rudy, he had to break Rudy down into pieces like a jigsaw puzzle. And then Rudy was able to put himself back together again. He needed to surrender in such depth because it was surrendering in such depth that enabled him to kiss the foot of Swami Muktananda. What Muktananda put him through. He was able to bow down and kiss the foot of Muktananda. Swami Muktananda became very famous in America. How did he get to America? It was Rudy that brought him there. And I spent a lot of time with Rudy, and I knew I needed to be broken down. And I understood completely when he told me that, because I knew, Stuart, your ego, the image you have of yourself, also your insecurity, the problems you have with yourself, the lack of discipline you have in your, all of it needs to change. All of it needed to be broken down. And Rudy needed somebody who was stronger than him, to make him bow down and kiss that person's foot. Because that person was giving Rudy the energy. In order to deal with that person, Rudy had to go to God. He had to go to the highest levels that his inner life could take him so that he could deal consciously and find gratitude to that person. Now, we're not talking somebody that's a member of ICE. We're talking about somebody who was supposedly a great guru in India, famous guru in India. He wasn't being broken down by the CIA, he was being broken down by somebody that God put in his life in order to teach Rudy how to grow and build inside himself a level of love and gratitude for what this teacher was doing for him, although the teacher did it in a very difficult way. And I'm not talking about having not seen it. I was around Rudy Boy when Muktananda was in America. And man, that's when I asked him, I said, why do you put up with this? Because I saw it with my own eyes. Belittling Rudy, making Rudy into, it was just insane, And Rudy coming back and kissing the foot of his guru. The humility that required and the strength it required and the growth it required was an enormous teacher for me. And when Rudy used to kick my ass and beat, the shit he did to me, I never forgot him kissing Muktananda's foot. Never. And I said, Stuart, he once told me, Rudy, he said, Stuart, I've separated from Muktananda. And he really told me this in Big Indian. I was digging a ditch, and in Big Indian, I've broken from Muktananda, but I still want to experiment with his techniques, and I'm going to use you as a guinea pig. He told me this one day. And I said, Rudy, how deep should I dig this ditch? Because I knew what he was talking about. It had to do with magic. It had to do with all kinds of, some of it a little bit dark, that I needed to learn. And 20 years later, I learned why he did that to me, because I had to know that. I had to know how to deal with that in my life. I had to be broken down and be taught that. And boy, I tell you, it took a lot of overcoming Stuart to be taught those things. It's just recognizing that, whatever we are, it's not enough. Because to be with God, there has to be a total state of surrender. You can't even have an image of yourself and who and what you are. And that requires probably the deepest, profoundest level of inner strength that any human being can carry with themselves through life. Total surrender of any image of who we think we are and what we are. And Rudy was a very dynamic, charismatic person. I mean, he walked into a room and the whole energy in the room changed. And he told me, I need somebody who can break that down. And Muktananda was strong enough to do it. And I wasn't quite as charismatic and dynamic as Rudy. But at the same time, I knew, Stuart, in my condition that I was in, even today, what do you think I do this with all of you? Your presence here breaks me down. I have to go to a deeper level inside myself in order to do this. Every one of you is acting, in a way because of your need for growth that forces me to go deeper and not accept anything, any level that I arrive at in my life. I have to continue to go deeper. Otherwise, it's kind of a crazy thing to do 7 times a week. Staring into a computer. It's like wanted posters here, staring into a computer, but I need what these classes do to break me down. I need a level of work inside myself that never takes myself for granted or any of you for granted. I'll never forget when Rudy told me that, because I had been through it with him. I saw what he went through. When I was in Texas with him and Muktananda, and all the time Muktananda was at the ashram there in New York, and I saw what Rudy was going through. And when he told me that, I said, "Oh shit, this is going to be quite a year." He said, but it was amazing, remarkable what I learned and how 20 years later, it basically saved my life. That's where I say life has an extraordinary smorgasbord of all kinds. It's the greatest university in the world, life. And it's got all these departments that we have to learn from. And we don't learn by rejection, we learn by embracing and learning. Does anyone else have a question they would like?
Stuart, I just want to say that I think in America the hour has already changed. Excuse me for being so late. I hear it is 7 o'clock still.
Oh, it's good to see you, Paul. Always
Yes,
good.
I'm sorry I wasn't there for a couple of Sundays, but I will be there back again.
Yeah. How are you? How's Candace? How's the baby?
They're
Everybody.
very good. They're very good. I
God
will
bless
do their regards. Thank you.
you. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, if there are no more questions, thank you. Great questions today. They really made me work very deep. And I truly appreciate that when questions like that are asked, because I grow from them too. And hopefully you all grow because of them also, and these classes. So thank you, and God bless you. And there'll be class this evening. Pat will be teaching, and then tomorrow evening at 7:30 too. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.